Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Chatham Select Board meeting of October 31st, 2023. Happy Halloween, everyone. Please note, this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chair. Seeing none, pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 20, until March 31st, 2025, this meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceeding as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to the meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 203-386-491#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel TV, which is now Xfinity Channel 8 and 1070, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. First action of the evening is to establish a quorum. Roll call. Select Board Member Nicastro.
Present.
Select Board Member Davis.
Present.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Present.
Select Board Member Shell.
Present.
And Select Board Member Matters is present. We are all here tonight. Just a quick little rundown of tonight's agenda. We will start off with the approval of 2 sets of minutes. Then we will move into public announcements and agenda item requests. This is the time of the evening where you have a public announcement, or if you want to make an agenda item request for future discussion for the board to take, that will be the time in our agenda to take that action. Then we will go into public comment on our business agenda, which tonight consists of approval of sale on town property for the annual garden club, acceptance of a memorial bridge at Stage Harbor and Champlain Road, our Summer Residence Advisory Committee annual report, a select board goals and town manager objective setting process discussion, consider new parking enforcement technology and propose increase in parking violation fine schedule, consider a letter of support for grant funding for electric vehicle charging stations at the Chatham Airport, consider engaging an engineering study to develop a plan to make the current Center for Active Living at 193 Stony Hill Road serviceable for the needs of Chatham seniors. We have an informational discussion on the townwide communication preference survey, which will be done by our communications manager, Shauna Neely. We have two appointment discussions. We'll have our town manager's report. And then following the town manager's report, the select board will recess into the small meeting room next door for a working session to discuss committee, board, and commission review process. So with all that said and done, we will start with approval of minutes, and I will start by the approval of the October 3rd, 2023 meeting minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right. Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of edits on page 5 first. At the very top, I think Dan Young's name is spelled differently. Thank you. Kathy, you already got that. And on page 11, right in the middle, the motion by Mr. Dykens and then a motion by myself it says to appoint. I think it should say nominate in both places to be consistent with all the other motions on those appointments. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments? Jeff?
I think Kemmerly is Kemmerly, K-E-M-M-E-R-L-Y. I think it's Doug Kemmerly.
Okay. Any additional? Okay. All those in favor? Select Board Member Nicastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Now I'll accept the motion to approve the set of minutes for October 17th, 2023.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second, thank you. Questions, comments?
He was first. Mike was
Mike?
Yeah, I have to find it here. I had one on page 10. In the second paragraph, the last line of that paragraph says tactics to put the strategy into action over the next 1 to 2 years. It's not a sentence And I don't know whether it was probably Director Halela who said something about those tactics, but I couldn't remember and I didn't have time to go back and look. So if anybody remembers, that sentence probably could use a little help.
We had a slide on that, so I can work with Kathy to pull up that slide
Okay.
again.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few, a couple of these are typos, but on the first page, I think on the list of attendees, Dr. Millen's last name is not listed, Dr. Robin Millen, in the third sentence. Up at the top on page 2, at the bottom, the motion by Mr. Dykens, entertainment permit should be plural. There were more than one permit. Page 6, I'd like to insert a sentence. Up at the very top, it says there was discussion on the potential to make the Dr. Florence Sullivan Awards needs-based. I'd like to insert after that, reservations about doing so were also expressed. Reservations about doing so were also expressed. Page 7, in the middle of the page, the paragraph that begins other available funds in the fourth line, I think the word received should be reserved for appropriation. You see that, Kathy? And at the bottom, the last paragraph, Mr. Nicastro, I'd like to insert has made an agenda item request to consider. And finally, on page 8, the name of the committee up at the top, it should be Water and Sewer Advisory Committee. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Any additional? All right, all those in favor? Select Board Member DeCastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Abstain.
Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. All right, thank you. Next part of our agenda, public announcements and agenda item requests. Anything from the board? Mike?
Yeah, I have two. My first one is, I'd like an agenda item for us to discuss basically action and allocation of responsibilities between this board and the Affordable Housing Trust Board with respect to the Stepping Stones property. We had a discussion the other day at the Affordable Housing Trust meeting, and there's a recognition there that any development is likely to include capital A affordable housing. So what we asked for or would like to have is a kind of an understanding with this board as to how to allocate that and how to proceed.
Okay, wonderful. Maybe we can work with the town manager to make sure we capture that in the proper manner.
That's too many words?
No. I just want to make sure we capture it in the right way.
Yep.
That's perfect.
Done.
Thank you.
Yes.
And you had in 2?
My second, if I may, my second one really, I'll defer to Shireen. She mentioned it at the Affordable Housing Trust meeting as well. I think we should have, get together as a board, a letter of support for the proposed Affordable Homes Act and related 4.18 billion bond that the governor has proposed with respect to housing in Massachusetts.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. Dean?
Thank you. I'm just really following up on both items that Mike, thank you. I'm really following up on both items that Mike just requested, and I'm fully supportive of the first one. But I think in connection with that, there was a recent opinion by town council that was provided. Could that be in the packet when we discuss that? And secondly, can we get a summary of when we discuss the proposed letter, summary of what's in that bill? I'm particularly interested in the transfer tax and how it works as compared to our own legislation. Thank you. Thank you.
There is a summary. Community Development has that summary in hand already, so
Okay.
we're able to get to it.
Okay. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put on the agenda an issue that came to my attention to the South Coastal Committee with respect to the landing at Champlain Road, the end of Champlain Road.
No, Sears Road.
It's Sears Road, excuse me. It's gotten much tighter because of a railing that has been put up, and it's really negating, I would say, 5 or 6 or even 7 parking spaces there. It's very difficult to maneuver. So I'd like to get a report from staff, from Ted Keon and the harbor master, anybody else that needs to be involved, because we really need to pay attention to what's going on and near our town landings. So,
It's something that's already been kind of discussed at some level, and I'm more than happy to discuss it further.
Super.
Yeah,
thank you, yeah, it was brought to my attention by the committee.
yep. Anything else from the board? Anyone from the public? Roz?
Hi, I'm Roz Coleman, and I want to thank you for letting us speak with you as you are making your plans. Forgive my voice, I have still remnants of long COVID. Now, I also want to second what Joanne Sprague suggested when you were having your workshop. And her suggestion was that the board look at Alex Hilaire's excellent assessment data to see how it relates to taxes. I think that's an excellent idea, and I have a few additions that I would like you to look at relative to taxes and assessment. First of all, the paper is a metaphor of using swimming pools to look at the whole idea of private versus public or municipal priorities. And now, I think it's important to try to understand the disparities that are robbing Chatham of its longtime year-round residents and even
Roz,
some.
I'm going to interrupt you 1 second.
Yes.
I very much appreciate this presentation.
Mm-hmm.
This might be better saved or better procedurally handled if you could kind of summarize your agenda requests.
Okay.
And then we save the kind of the bulk of your work to be able
Yes.
to have the appropriate discussion and post it properly so we could act on it.
Yes, the agenda request would be to consider building or a municipal Monomoy pool. And we basically do not have a swimming pool in this town or in Harwich. And I have outlined the data supporting the school committee. It was a school committee merger that we had in September 2014, remember? When we merged with Monomoy Regional High School. And at that time, well, I have the supporting data. I would like you to consider merging to build a municipal swimming pool in Harwich. And if you don't want, you have the data that I've suggested. And now how will this work? I mean, if this is really what I want you to do, I want you to explore assessments and get some data. And I want you to explore the whole idea of having a Monomoy Regional Municipal Pool.
I would think we'd need to obviously talk with the town of Harwich, for starters.
I have talked to the
Oh, you
town
have
of
talked, and
Harwich,
what-
as a matter of fact.
Okay.
And they tell me that not a week goes past when somebody doesn't walk in to their center and say, why don't we have a pool here? And I asked the woman who's in charge, she's been in charge of that facility. It's across the street from the Monomoy Regional High School. And they were fortunate enough to at least be able to put the plumbing in for a pool. Every other time we have talked about having a pool attached to school facilities here in Chatham or in Harwich, it has been way too expensive, and we certainly wouldn't want to have a pool because it's too expensive, too much upkeep. And I think that contrasts with all of the pools that we have that are private in town.
Well, what I would suggest is that we, obviously internally with staffs, kind of start the conversation about some of the presentations you've given to Harwich and obviously your presentation, document here to us, to figure out how to move a conversation forward, exactly
Well,
what the
I
next.
asked the woman in charge over in Harwich, and she said, I work for the selectmen. I do what the selectmen tell me to do. And I said, well, how would Chatham, what do you suggest if Chatham wanted to discuss it? What would they do? Well, it's up to the selectmen.
Right, and
So-
my thought process would be, it would have to be a discussion leading up to a town meeting action would be the most likely pathway for this. So, timing-wise, we have, time to do that properly. It's not gonna be last-minute discussions. So I think I would defer to the town manager to kind of set the baseline for some initial discussions internally, so we could bring forward something to town meeting if that is so the appetite of the select board and the voters. So that's probably the best, easiest process.
And then I think there are some research questions that would be useful to know about how many in-ground swimming pools there are in this town, and if they have increased in number in the last 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years. There must be somebody in town who has that data. I don't,
Okay, well, we will
but I
work.
think it's important.
Myself, the town manager, will work with you to kind of bring this forward to appropriate agenda discussion. But right
Okay.
now is not the time to get into the meat and potatoes, unfortunately.
Okay.
But, no, I think it's worth a discussion and see what kind of appetite the voters might have.
Okay.
Any additional comments from no? Yes, please.
Hi, happy Halloween. I'm Allison Coleman, and I have a suggestion for an agenda or for your goal setting for the next period of time. Last weekend, there was a really excellent community forum on climate resiliency in the Pleasant Bay watershed. It was sponsored by Pleasant Bay Alliance and a number of other local nonprofits, including Friends of Pleasant Bay, of which I'm president. There were a number of really great data-driven presentations looking at the impact of sea level rise on the barrier beach and public infrastructure. There were some interesting things on protection of marshes, salt marshes and eelgrass restoration. And then there was a really interesting discussion which ensued that was also noted in the Chronicle's editorial this week on whether the 4 towns are including budgetary line items to address climate change and resiliency efforts, and whether from a policy perspective, resiliency is being incorporated into work plans and budgets for each department across the towns. And after the meeting, I was made aware of an article that passed at the June 22nd, 2020 annual town meeting, Chapter 130 Climate Policy, Section 130-1, that reads in part, the town...
Allison, I'm going to
Yeah.
interrupt. If you could just make this is typically not where we get too much in depth in it. Procedurally, this is not an agenda item discussion, so I got to be careful about how in depth you want to get into this.
Well, there was an article that passed June 22nd, 2020, that basically the town adopted a policy of getting to net zero from a climate change perspective. And I would say this article probably doesn't completely address the questions that were raised at this community forum in terms of what are we doing in terms of planning and budgeting for climate resiliency. But it does raise the question, and I think it would be useful for the board to follow up on this article to find out, have there been, are there plans that the town has undertaken around getting to net zero? Is there a timeline for that? Are there targeted activities? If so, what are they? And has it been done across town departments? Because that was what the article suggested. And then further, I think the question that was really being bandied about at the forum last weekend was this issue about being ready for what is already occurring in terms of coastal resiliency and things like that, and whether or not those the planning for that is happening, and then also is the budget being budget considerations, are they being taken into account at this point across all the departments. So it's just something to look at in terms of helping the town and its residents be ready for, what we're already beginning to experience related to climate change. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay. Is there any additional agenda item requests or public announcements in the live audience? Is there anyone online?
No.
No? All right. We're going to move on. Next, public comment on our business agenda. Oh, thank you. Start with anyone from the public. John, please.
John Holgren, South Chatham, and I'm here because I came tonight because of the, I saw the discussion that you're going to have about the parking violations and the new fees and so on. And coming from a person basically sort of in the hospitality industry and so on, I looked at that and said, okay, $50 right now, fine. 75, that might be a little bit steep, Now, I will also, after talking with Chief Anderson today, say that maybe we could have a little bit of a split fee. For instance, if you parked for 3 hours at Lighthouse Beach, $75. Downtown, if you're a little bit over the lines because the last time you parallel parked was in driver's ed, maybe it could be $60. So just the idea, throw out there, obviously, apparently we wrote a lot of parking tickets this summer because of the new community service officers. I'm not sure how, if that's not obviously not going to continue forever, but, I think the idea of having the new software and so on and the technology to better track and do tickets is a great idea. My concern was that, we might have some people that if they sort of were, somewhat over the lines, they might, and they got a $60 or $75 ticket, they might go, Chatham, we're not coming back. So, $60 they might be willing to tolerate. So I just wanted to throw that into your discussion later to possibly consider the idea of having some different fees, maybe for different types of violations and so on, and still basically raise some additional revenue, because I think, sounds like, with the increased number of tickets that are being written and so on, we certainly raised a lot more money from parking violations this summer than we have in the last few years. So that's pretty much it, I think. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments from the live audience, I guess. Is there anyone online who would like to make a comment or a question?
No.
No? No? All righty. Moving on to our regular business agenda tonight. We're going to start with the consider approval of sale on goods for annual Chatham Garden Club plant sale on June 1st, 2024. Kit Curtis, is Kit online or?
I am here. Can you hear me?
No? Well,
Can you hear me?
she's online? Kit?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you,
Hello?
yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so we just want approval to be able to sell plants to raise money for the Chatham Garden Club outside on the lawn of the community center.
Right.
We tend to do this annually, and I understand I need your approval. It has been approved by the community center, actually.
Park and Rec, yes.
Park and Rec, thank you.
All right, well, any questions from the board? Jeff?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board grant a special permit for the sale of goods and town property to Chatham Garden Club for sales on town property at the community center on Saturday, June 1st, 2024, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., and these folks get the early bird award.
Second.
Yes.
A second. Further questions? All those in favor, Select Board Member DeCastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Good luck with the event.
Thank you.
Next, consider acceptance of a memorial bench on Stage Harbor Champlain Road ramp area. Is it Stewart or is it Mr. Kirby that's going to be presenting? Stewart's in the back, and we have the Kirbys online, I believe.
Mr. Kirby, you're still muted.
I'm here.
Oh, we can hear you.
You can hear me? All set? Okay. Does Stuart want to go first?
Sure. This is a proposed, good evening. This is a proposed bench for Stage Harbor Old Mill Boatyard facility. Currently, there's one bench in that facility and one picnic table. We were thinking of putting it adjacent to the picnic table, facing the water. It'd be a nice kind of an addition to that area. It's where the parking lot transitions. It's in the middle of the trailer parking only, if familiar with that. And here to answer any questions, and Mr. Kirby can carry on.
Okay, Mr. Kirby, please go ahead.
Yeah. So it's a memorial bench, but I just want to make clear that my father is still very much alive. The bench is going to be dedicated to he and my mom, who passed away 5 years ago. They've owned a home in Chatham since 1976. And where the bench is hopefully going to be located is very close to where they used to go clamming. And it was a very special spot for both of them. So that's why we chose that location. And my dad's turning 90 in December. So we sort of were hoping to have the approval before then, not hoping to have it installed, but at least have it approved so we could tell him what we're going to be doing on his birthday in December. The bench, we were given two choices by Parks and Rec, plastic or wood. It's going to be a plastic bench. That was the recommendation given to us because it has greater longevity and durability. And there's going to be, 3 lines of engraving. Just basically, it's going to say, happy as clams in Chatham. And it'll say Jerry and Claire Kirby. And then with love from our family. And that's it.
Great, thank you very much. Questions or comments from the board? Shereen?
I have no comments. I just want to say thank you very much. It's a beautiful spot. I sit down there all the time myself, so a little extra bench might be nice. It's beautiful in the morning. Low tides are lovely. So what I'd like to do is make a motion
Okay,
that the select board approve the donation of the bench for Stage Harbor Champlain Road ramp area and thank the Kirby family and wish their dad a very happy 90th birthday.
do I hear a second?
Second.
Additional questions or comments? All those in favor, Select Board Member Nacastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Aye, with thanks.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Well, good luck and early happy 90th birthday to your father.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda.
Thank you, Stuart.
Summer Residence Advisory Committee Annual Report to the Select Board. We have their chair, Jamie Meehan, in-house. Jamie, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Jamie Meehan, Chair of the Summer Residence Advisory Committee. And I wanted to thank the Select Board for giving me the opportunity to present our report regarding the summer season. I know you've heard this before, but I wanted to reiterate our mission. Number 1, to give summer residents a voice. Number 2, give the Select Board the benefit of information and views. Number 3, give fresh outlooks to the town. And number 4, take a position and make a case for or against town matters. We got started in early June with a virtual meeting. We reviewed the annual town meeting. And then over the course of the next 2.5 months, we heard from various town committees and town leaders, all in an effort to learn the issues and to accomplish our mission. We focused on a few things in great detail. Number 1, finances. Number 2, housing. Number 3, water and sewer. And number 4, communications. And then one of our last meetings, we successfully hosted the 77th Annual Summer Town Meeting. For next year, most likely, a couple of topics that we'll focus in on are water and sewer connection issues, 88% of respondents to our survey indicated that water and sewer connection issues were important to them. And also, we'll try to further our effort in the communications area to better understand what Summer residents are interested in. In closing, I'd like to thank the town for encouraging the collaboration among town committees. And I'd also like to say, and I'm biased here, that the SRAC is such a passionate group with a unique skill set. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Jamie. Questions or comments from the board? Shreen?
This is just a process question, and I know you've done this traditionally over the years the same way, where your committee comes up with concepts and have the staff come in and some of us come in and report out on what's going on with the town. And then you have the annual meeting with Summer residents.
Right.
We've been there. It's a nice meeting. And I was just wondering if you ever considered sort of switching it up a little bit and doing a meeting with, inviting the community to a general meeting at the beginning of your season to discuss what they want to hear from ahead of time, and doing some real-time sort of solution or informational gathering to report out at the annual town meeting. Has that been a consideration at all?
It has not, for a couple reasons. One, there's only so much manpower, is not the correct sexist word, but there's only so much bandwidth to handle topics. So in order to really dig into the topics, we have a set number. At the beginning of the season, the topics that we might hear from Summer residents may be totally different from what we hear at the end. So we're kind of walking a fine line between what the committee has bandwidth for, has an appetite for, and can really add value in terms of accomplishing our mission. But having said that, I think the communication effort in surveying Summer residents as to what they're really interested in, I would imagine that we're going to do that sooner in the year versus developing and really starting from scratch in that effort this past year and only getting it into a live format towards the end of the summer. So if we have that available towards the beginning, I think maybe we'll get that input sooner rather than later.
I imagine that is part of a solution because to the issue, because your mission says give a voice to the Summer residents, and I would think that hearing from them earlier than later might be a better approach to keeping in line with the mission statement is your outreach and all that. But
good point.
That's just my points. Thank you for listening.
Okay, additional board members, and Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jamie, thank you for your report, and my ongoing, and I think the rest of the board feels the same way, compliments to the Summer Residents Committee for the valuable input you all give to the town. I just had a question. Under the current law in Massachusetts, I think you can meet virtually, completely virtually. Do you contemplate, with that change, meeting during the off-season? Do you do that, or do you have?
There's been talk about it. Historically, what we do is our first planning meeting is done virtually, and that's before everybody gets into Chatham. And that's usually done in late May, early June. And then from then on, we establish our quorum physically. But there was talk about having a virtual meeting perhaps in March, April, this go-around, but that hasn't been finalized yet.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff, and then Mike.
Thank you, Corey. Jamie, thank you and your committee for your fine efforts. Always enjoy the Summertown meeting and also your feedback on the issues that you guys are willing to grapple with. Back to Shireen's question and comment, the survey that you guys put out, did you feel as though that was successful in terms of gauging interests and the depth of interest in certain issues? Did you feel it was successful, and would you repeat it?
Very much so. We would repeat it. I think we'll enhance it to some extent, mostly from a timing standpoint, to Sereen's point, get it out there earlier. But it was, in my opinion, hugely successful in terms of doing two things. One, making the summer residents aware of SRAC. We asked a question, what percentage or have you ever heard of SRAC? And about 64% of people had heard of SRAC. That means 36 hadn't, 36%. So we want to do a better job at making sure that the summer residents know of SRAC, number one, and number two, more importantly, is trying to gauge what their interests are.
Just a quick follow-up. You mentioned water and sewer connectivity as the kind of maybe more high-level, high-priority issue, I should say. What were the next couple issues, Jamie, that folks touched on?
The other one that would come to mind would be beaches, broadly defined. And off the top of my head, that's all that I can think of. But there were 3 or 4 topics that received over 70% interest.
Thank you. Thanks.
Mike.
Hi, Jamie. Thanks for everything you did this summer and for the work of your committee. And I would echo what my colleagues have said about enjoying the input and so forth. I don't really, this is not really a question. Let me just set as a predicate, Nantucket has had a pretty good working relationship with the non-full-time members of that community around housing and addressing what I'll call affordable housing, but generally housing issues there. And you mentioned that that's something that you've worked on, the committee has worked on, and I expect it'll continue to be a pretty high focus for you. I really just want to call your attention to our governor's Affordable Homes Act proposal. There's a bunch of stuff in there that, generally speaking, is supportive of the overall effort to get housing into Massachusetts that people can afford. If you're not familiar with it, then I'll tell you a couple of things that you probably want to focus on. And if you are, then forgive me for telling you what you already know. But there are some issues in there, there's some proposals in there that I think have been the subject of discussion by your committee and input to us from your committee that I just want to call your attention to, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, good, thank you. And so I know the state has made an effort and proposed certain things from a funding standpoint. So that's certainly an issue that we'll chime in on, and I'm sure you've heard this, the housing fatigue issue. So we need to make sure that that's overcome with new ideas and this new effort. Yes.
Thank you.
Well, Jamie, thank you very much. I want to thank you, the members of the Summer Residence Advisory Committee. We have a very unique process in Chatham that allows this type of input. I think the work of the Summer Residence Advisory Committee, I think the annual Summer Residence Town Meeting is all very beneficial in the process of how we as a select board review the various topics and how we move forward with prioritizations and action plans. And I think it's a very healthy and beneficial, mutually beneficial process that you guys have, offer the community. And I want to thank you for your work, continuous work as a group.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
All right, next, select board goals and town manager objectives setting process for calendar year 2024 fiscal, which is FISCAL, year 2025.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So in your packet is a kickoff memo per se to have us focus on our fiscal year 25, calendar year 24 goals and objectives setting process. And as you know, the Select Board's organizational mission with accompanying goals is very important on multiple levels, as it provides clear policy direction for service delivery, establishes priorities that guide the efforts of our dedicated boards, commissions, and committees, which we'll discuss in our workshop later tonight, and provides, helps shape our planning, funding, and citizen engagement. It also is very important for my role as the town manager for leadership and providing staff direction on service delivery, employee development, as well as employee engagement to make sure that we're carrying out our responsibilities to the town as a whole. So the cover memo that I provided to you has a look back to November of 2011, where we first established our value statements that one has been revised more recently in 2022. It looks at our mission statement, also established in fall of 2011, and then provides the goal categories that we had also had established back in the fall of 2011. And so as I was talking to our leadership team as well as division managers, we were thinking about possibly rebooting the process as we look forward, possibly the 2040. So I know it's kind of a big jump, but we thought we would piece it out a little bit. So the past practices of working goals through the community value statements sometimes causes a disconnect in that the community can't really see where we achieve the goals and the objectives established by the board. And some of it falls into what we call tactical, which is the day-to-day activities that staff uses to carry out your directives. And so what we were thinking about with the reboot for this time is that we look towards a long-term vision for the community as well as shorter-term strategic positioning. And the approach that we're presenting is for each select board member to just respectfully identify 5 goals and 5 goals in total. And I know it seems like it'd be challenging, but in the end, the board and all boards since 2011 seem to have a unified vision and pretty close in what their priorities are. So I don't think it will be that difficult to pare it down to 5 goals. And then from there, we can do our objectives. So me and our team are requesting that you consider that abbreviated refresh process. And then if you're interested in scheduling a separate workshop meeting that we can have to have all your ideas and culminating into the goals. I don't want to forget the review of the community value statements, and again, not for tonight, but when we do have our goal setting discussion, I think we need some fresh eyes and looking, making sure it's affecting and servicing the community as a whole. So the ask for tonight is, if you're interested, have a dedicated workshop to review the existing value statements and goals categories for relevancy, revision, and refinement, and to further discuss a shared vision for the town with an awareness of past goals, but without any obligation to build upon them, and to possibly limit our entire goals to 5. So happy to discuss that further.
Well, thank you, Jill. I mean, we've discussed this a little bit, you know, during our weekly meetings and what have you not. I think that the process that has been in place has worked well. I think, though, we could make a better attempt and better process in it. And in taking this approach, I personally am very supportive of, you know, looking at our goals, kind of fine-tuning, kind of really getting focused on start, finish type components, measuring them appropriately, along with going back and reviewing our value statements and making sure that what is down in you know, written form is what we're following through on, and making sure that our philosophical objectives are reflective in what we put down in writing. So I would be open to a new approach, kind of stepping things forward and looking things a little bit more ahead. And I'm hoping the board is also supportive of this process. So I'll open it up to the board for comments. I'll start with Mike.
I'm supportive. I'll start there. I think a workshop's a good idea. I did actually look at the value statements. I remember when the last one, the one that was added, I guess it was in 2022, was suggested, there was a comment made, or maybe it was after the fact, that was last on the list the right place for it? I actually sat down and looked at them and asked myself, just assuming these are the right ones, are they in the right order, if they're to be interpreted as expressing priorities, so to speak. So I'm completely with the program with that suggestion for the value statement conversation. I found your discussion, I think I got it, but I think I understand how you explained it, but let me ask the direct question. When we talk about looking at the goals anew, and holding ourselves to 5, are we talking about taking the goal categories here that are now 8 and trimming those to 5, whatever they happen to be? Is that what we're saying?
I think it's going to be organic. So typically, we start the process giving the select board members worksheets where you identify your top 5 priorities for you and the town, and then for me as the town manager. And I think that then, well, I know that then we categorize your responses and put them into those, 7 or 8 goal categories. I think we can refine this even more if the board's amenable to it. Certainly, it's a discussion, and if we do the worksheet again and you present your 5 goals, then we can have that as the basis of the discussion and decide if we really need to have, a goal category for legal. Again, we're just trying to take away some of the day-to-day items that staff is working on, and some of the, day-to-day items the select board reviews on a regular basis, to have just a more upward vision.
Okay, but when we get done and there's a piece of paper reflecting the results of our work, there's not going to be another section of 5 goals. There's going to be a section that will replace what's on this page here, ideally with 5 instead of 8.
Yes, ideally.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff?
I'm supportive as well. I think it's a great idea. I think the workshop is a great idea. I think 5 is going to be tough, but we'll take on the homework assignment and come up with 5, I guess. And then, is the vision, at least at present, that we'd synthesize our collective 25, if you will, and see where we agree, where we disagree, and then prioritize? Is that going to be part of the workshop effort, which is what
Yes.
typically we've done in the past?
Yeah, so what we need to do is get materials to you to complete worksheet type of materials, and then have the ranking. I don't know if the process is really going to change in the way that we do it. I think the outcome of it might be a little more condensed. So that's probably the end result that might look different to people.
Okay, good.
Shreen?
Briefly, I'm just, I think you guys have all addressed all the questions that I had, but I'm in support of the process and the workshop.
Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've, of course, have had multiple workshops. We had a since I've been on the board, that's when we started these workshops. We've had them on Saturday mornings, a couple hours apiece. It's only the last couple of years when we have inserted the goal-setting process into the regular agenda for efficiency purposes. And I'm okay with the workshop wherever you want to place it. And I support your recommendations. And I would just point out that in addition to these 8 items, these 8 categories, we actually have about 25 to 30 goals. We've had that. So when you have a list of 20 to 30 goals and priorities, actually we've never prioritized. We've just had goals. Then none of them is a goal. None of them is a priority. So you really need to whittle it down to a finite number that you can actually hold ourselves and the town manager and her staff accountable to. So I think that what falls into the goals now are basically implementation strategies for our.
It's more of an action plan that we do.
Yes. So I think with those comments, I'm supportive of what you want to do, and I'll leave it for you and the chair to decide, how you want to schedule this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we'll coordinate and figure out a schedule and move this forward.
All right,
All right, thank you very much. Next on the agenda, consider new parking enforcement technology and proposed increase in parking violation fine schedule. We have our Police Chief Michael Anderson and Director of Information Technology Craig Rowe. Good evening, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So, why are we here tonight? Quite honestly, this process and this topic came up simply because since the beginning of time, the police department has been issuing paper tickets from a paper ticket book. And it is, quite frankly, time for us to reorder. We usually order ticket books in a large amount. Usually a ticket order lasts us 2.5, 3 years. It was time for us to reload our ticket supplies. Word got out, and with different town staff members working with different parking or parking ticket solutions, Mr. Rowe approached me and approached other members of town staff and suggested that this might be an opportunity to modernize and simplify and streamline the parking ticket issuance and the violation observances, the ticket collections, the appeal process, and the ticket payment process. Now, I know that there's a parking clerk involved, but quite frankly, you know, we're going to talk about the potential to raise parking fees. In my lifetime here at the police department, it's happened twice. Most recently in 2004, the fines were doubled from 25 to 50. And I think in 1996, the fees went from 15 to 25. So 1996 was the second most recent, 2004 was the most recent. So I will defer to Craig, but at this point, if we were to decide to raise the parking fees, that increase may support the equipment and the software to introduce electronic tickets, electronic printing of the tickets, a better, more smooth line processing of the tickets, and elimination of the paper tickets in general.
So I'm kind of the numbers and the back end side of things here for this presentation. So we went out and Chief provided me some information on the past 5 years. We didn't include COVID year because that was just such an anomaly. There wasn't a lot of downtown traffic, so we took that out of play. But what we got is 5 years worth of ticket writing in the town, and what violations have been issued. And as you can see here, starting in 2018, you know, we wrote about $64,000 in tickets, 1,282 tickets, 1481. 2021 and 2022, the numbers were much lower, 800 and 599, and the chief can speak to that.
Quite frankly, in 18 and 19, we had a dedicated, our staffing levels were high enough that we were able to dedicate a full-time downtown patrol officers that primarily worked day shift, Monday through Sunday, 8 to 4, 10 to 6. COVID was 2020, 21 and 22, we did not have enough staff to staff a full-time patrol on Main Street. And 2023, you'll see the increase, and that was largely because we had four of the dedicated community service officers, which, from all accounts, what we've heard have been greatly appreciated.
Mm-hmm. So we get into the, where are we here? Sorry about that. Okay, so these here, now it's a little tough to see, but this is over the 5 years what types of tickets we've written around town. And as you can see here, the bigger numbers, the prohibited area, the restricted parking, parking outside of the marked lines. Now, we had a resident bring up that discussion on parking outside the marked lines. Now, I've had a discussion with the fire chief as well. And yes, sometimes parking outside the marked lines is really tough. If somebody's over 3 inches on this side and 9 inches on that side, that's a total of a foot on Main Street on a busy day. The fire chief had mentioned, sometimes it's difficult to get apparatus down the street there, ambulances, et cetera. So you'll see that is a big number in our tickets written, specifically last year. And as you can see, there's a bit of a trend with parking outside of marked lines.
It's also the violation that receives the most complaints from citizens. And quite frankly, with the evolution of these vehicles, the days of just a mirror strike, minor accident paper exchanges are gone. Any mirror strike with the vehicles involved turns into a major crash. That, there's another 20 minutes for a crash investigation.
Mm-hmm. And one other thing you can see in the numbers here, and the chief had mentioned that the community service officers were specifically working downtown. And you'll see in 2023 here, we aren't for beach parking violations, Lighthouse, where is it, Lighthouse? We only wrote 3 Lighthouse over 30-minute parkings, as opposed to you see the trend of 79, 89, 298, and 222.
And again, that's because of the 2 seasons that we had the dedicated police officers. They were on police mountain bicycles, and the Lighthouse was in their patrol area. The community service officers were on foot. Their patrol area was strictly downtown. We are proposing, hopefully, the addition of 1 additional community service officer for next fiscal year, and that position would be a mobile position, and we would implement, seeing the success of this past year, the ability for the community service officers to ride the 2 of our new e-bikes that we've purchased.
Okay, so as you see, we're still averaging a decent amount of tickets being written each year. All of these are paper, written, and then submitted. So we'll just go over a couple more numbers here. This is what I made calls to the appropriate towns that kind of abut us and came up with what their parking violations are. And you can see here, Barnstable, their general violations are $40. They also do expired registration inspection stickers. Sandwich is at $25, $50, $100. I think probably the closest rounded town to us is probably Wellfleet with their parking, very similar. And you can see they do different types of fees. No beach permit is $75. And you go down the whole range there. So when we were looking at these numbers, every town that I spoke to, I called the parking clerk and officers in each of these towns to get their numbers and what the violations were. And every one of them I'd mentioned that we're looking at a fee increase, and every town that I spoke to is looking at a fee increase. They're all seeing a trend that parking is becoming a problem, and they're all looking to increase their fees at some point in time. So we look at some software. We've had 2 vendors come in so far to discuss software for this purpose. One thing to consider is in 2022, we wrote 599 tickets. We only had 72% of those tickets were actually paid. 28% were not paid. So one of the big things that we looked at in the software, when we want a software to implement, is we need to make sure that we're getting payments on these tickets. This company that we looked at, and I've only got their numbers, I'm awaiting 2 more vendors with their information, but this company will directly send the tickets to the mass RMV. This company has a really nice tool as well. The officers don't have to write in the license plate. They can scan the mass RMV inspection sticker, provides them with all the information about the car, writes a ticket, and then moves on. On the federal level, this company also integrates with a federal database that the chief could probably speak on, which does track parking tickets for out-of-state residents. And
Sure. Some of the reasons why, for non-payment, could be a multitude of things. The four big reasons are, if the offending vehicle is from out of state, there's many times where that out-of-state vehicle is not operated by the vehicle's owner. It's hard to determine that vehicle's owner. Secondly, if the vehicle is a lease, if it's a lease vehicle, leased to a corporation, it's very difficult to find the operator. There's a lot of confusion sometimes because of the payment procedure. On our ticket, for example, we receive several tickets or tickets are voided or late because of the simple fact that the self-addressed envelope that the fine is returned to Chatham is not, the stamp's not provided by the town. Most people assume that it is, and they just mail the ticket, and the ticket just disappears. And lastly, a lot of times the tickets are obstructed or unreadable, either because of the weather, they get crumpled up, or some other factors.
so the software that we looked at and is provided by a company called IPS. They charge a general setup fee, which is to create the tickets, to set up the database, and build us basically a robust database where all the tickets are going to be sent in, and then it'll be processed in a cloud environment. Setup fees are about $28,000. I don't think we need 500 rolls of paper. What I'm running into is that we write a relatively small amount of tickets compared to other towns. I think when I spoke to the gentleman at Barnstable, they wrote almost 9,000 tickets. We're writing 1,400, 1,500 tickets. So one nice thing about this IPS company is they're actually cutting they have a university package, which is designed for universities and schools, where we're allowed to use that software costing, which is actually half of most of the other vendors, which is a nice option for us. So we'll buy 12 printers. They're small printers, little Bluetooth printers. The parking enforcement officer will get an Android device, which is Bluetooth to the printer. They can either take a picture of the state inspection sticker if it's a Massachusetts car. It's going to pull up all the information on it, select the violation type, sends it right to the printer, pulls out a I think it's called microchrome type paper, which is waterproof, doesn't run. They'll leave it on the windshield. On the back of it will be a QR code, and part of the software package is once you get the ticket, a lot of times I've heard from the treasurer is that people want to just pay the ticket right away. They just don't, they know they've done the wrong thing, but I just want to pay it and be done with it. They can go on and scan a QR code. It's going to take them right to the web page, and they'll be able to pay their fine directly there without having to worry about any other, the whole process. So as soon as it's printed, it's up in the cloud and it's ready to be paid. One of the nice features with this software too is you can take pictures of the violation. So if somebody says, I wasn't parked there, it's, whatever the process will be, if the chief says, okay, I want pictures of all four sides of the vehicle so that if there's any debate, I know I got a ticket in Boston one time and I was like, I don't think I was in the wrong. When I looked at the picture, when I went online, I looked at the picture and I'm like, I was 100% in the wrong. So we have that option depending on what the chief recommends. We can picture all four sides of the vehicle if need be, et cetera, in the future. So it'll get sent up there. Our annual cost for the software is going to be about $15,000, $660 or so for the handheld devices, more paper as we need it. And then we have Verizon costs, which will be, we're going to keep probably 6 units up and running year-round, and then we'll have 6 units that will be deployed. If you want to speak on that, Chief?
My concern with Mr. Rowe's system was, would we have enough in the summertime? Our patrol cruisers would have one, our community service officers would have one, the Fish Pier Wharfinger would have one. I believe there were a couple assigned to be extras or in case one of them was inoperable. And then when the season ends, those ones that are sent outside of our agency will return back to us. So we'll have, plenty on hand for, if there's violations at the Anglers game or on first night or a snow emergency, we'll still have plenty of readers to go around.
And we'll probably take at least 5 to 6 units out of play once a season. We'll have them up for 3 months, and then we'll have 6. And as the chief says, if we need to have a couple more, we can always just turn on the service. We don't want to be paying for services that we don't need. Then comes down to the question on the payment process. So a lot of these companies offer absorption of transaction fees. And with the number that we're proposing to raise the ticket cost, we can absorb the transaction and the fee. So if you get whatever the number's going to be, that's what you pay. You go online, you pay that fee, you're done. There's no plus an extra, convenience fee. Generally, when I had the discussion with the other towns talking about online payment, they're moving towards that type of model as well because they feel, it's a convenience fee, but it's really not a convenience, an inconvenience fee because someone has to pay an extra, a $50 ticket, they got to pay an extra, $1.75 transaction fee. So we're looking to build all that into the total cost. So you get a ticket, you pay it, it's done. A couple of nice features of the software is, Parking Clerk will be able to just schedule hearings online. All tickets will be able to be seen at any point in time if the officers are out and, for some reason they want to see if there's unpaid tickets. Everything's in the cloud environment. Hearings can be set up relatively simple. And as I say, I think one of the big things is taking pictures. It's hard to argue with the picture. If you're in a violation, you're in a violation. So we're hoping that when you're issuing the tickets, if it's a handicap spot or whatever it might be, there's a clear picture, and it's very difficult to argue with the photo.
And uniquely enough, I think I spoke in front of you guys before about the recent court decisions that make chalking tires, the act of physically chalking a tire, as we used to at the lighthouse, that's actually now an illegal search. This software has the ability to virtually chalk somebody's tires in lieu of a parking meter. So we do have the ability to virtually chalk a vehicle's tires and then come back to see if that vehicle has exceeded a time limit in an area where that would be a violation.
So I'll just, this is what the handheld devices are going to look like. Relatively simple, small device here. We'll get some straps for the printers. They'll come in at the back at the end of the day, pop on a charger, Bluetooth. By what I hear, they're relatively versatile. With the strap, hopefully staff members don't drop them. This is what the ticket kind of looks like here. We can obviously generate whatever we want on the ticket. Fronts are, Town of Chatham, expiration, fees due. And then at the bottom there, it says photos taken, yes or no. So, if there's 3 or 4 pictures taken, person will flip the ticket over, hit the QR code, and they're going to see the pictures and the whole ticket of everything at that time.
Another benefit that I think is interesting for my end, when the officer sees the violation, it's as simple, let's say it's a Massachusetts registration, the device has the ability to scan the information off the vehicle's inspection sticker, so all that information is backfilled. the software is good enough to put us in the right location, so the location of the violation is already backfilled. The ability to take the photographs and then just very minimal data entry required by the issuer, which means less time on target, and that way we can get in and out and save some time.
So that comes to what we thought the number and what the chief and I had looked at, the software costs, et cetera, building all the fees into the increase. We kind of felt like a sweet spot was $75 for the increase in fee, from $50 to $75. And then, as the chief had mentioned, and I believe in the report that you had, would increase handicap parking spots up to $150. The range on the Cape is anywhere from $100 to $300. $300 in Provincetown for a handicap parking violation, and I believe the state you can go up to $300. So most towns are definitely above 100, couple at 150, couple at 200, and then a bump to 300. So this would be, if we based on the number of tickets we issued last year, you know, what the total cost would be for writing these tickets. You know, the town, if we wrote 1,500 tickets, you know, the town wouldn't be losing money on the software costs. And that was the big thing that we're looking at. If we're going to implement something, we don't want to lose money on implementing a piece of software that's actually going to cost the town a lot more money in the long run. So that's where we are.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. I was fortunate enough to sit in on the presentation last week, so I got a preview of all this, and I was able to process this a little bit better in preparation for tonight. You know, I think if we do use this technology, I do think the increase in $25 per traditional violation, I could support absorbing the $5 transaction fee. Totally fine with that. You know, it's good technology. There's a lot of benefits. I don't know other uses down the road we can discuss later, but as far as what we have now, we're not going to add any more signs. We're not going to, you know, this is just the technology and how we are processing tickets now. So it's a change in technology. Very supportive. My only question, and maybe this is going to come out sounding a little bit harsh, but some of the traditional violations, you know, there's a little discrepancy or interpretation, and that's where the photos come in. Okay, yes, I was over the line by an inch or 3 inches, whatever. But violations of handicap parking, that's not an obscure parking spot. It's very well marked, and we're not doing it for money making. People just shouldn't be parking there. If they're not supposed to be using that area, they shouldn't be doing it. So Mass General Law allows up to $300, which some towns have implemented. Why not $300 for town of Chatham? If people don't park in violation of it, they're never going to get the violation, never have to pay the ticket. I mean, the incentive is to tell people, no, this is not acceptable. Why don't we just go to $300?
Mass General Law, Chapter 90, Section 20A, allows you to make that decision.
Thank you.
What is it now? What is it now?
I like the response. But it's $50. The proposal is to move it to up to $150 for handicap spaces. Mass General Law allows us to go up to $300. So with my initial thoughts, I'm going to kick it off to the board for further comments. Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation, Chief and Craig. Couple of questions. I don't view this as a money-making venture. I view it as an enforcement measure, and it troubles me that 72% is the compliance rate now in terms of payment, right? So I'm interested in knowing how does this information get transmitted to the registry of motor vehicles, and do they hold that information so that when somebody's renewing their license or their registration, that it's held up until the tickets are paid to the town of Chatham?
They do. You'd have to ask the parking clerk the amount of tickets that are uploaded. I don't know if that amount of tickets that are available to be uploaded to the state is 100% from us. I don't know if that threshold of 100% is being uploaded.
Okay, but that is the protocol, though, that if.
It is.
That the state is supposed to.
The goal is to upload the scofflaws to the Massachusetts registry. And then if those fines are unpaid, their ability to renew their license is, you're unable to renew your license until your fines are paid.
Okay, what about out of state? So how does, that's a,
Reciprocalness from out of states is difficult, but the software company seems to think that they have the ability to do that, as we do not.
Yeah, so the software companies, they can tag right up to the Mass RMV. They have that option to be able to send it to the Mass RMV. One of the nice things, and I'm yet to confirm, but I'm about 90% sure, is when a violator goes in there to the RMV and they say, well, you got parking tickets in Chatham, XYZ, I believe they're able to pay then and there at the registry, as opposed to, because it's already with a collector or a receiver, they can pay there and not have to come back to the town and pay, which is a nice feature. They also link up to the federal database, and we as a town can, the vendors, they charge you a little bit of a fee, but we can offset that and they can collect those tickets that are out of state as well.
And I think Craig mentioned it would be worth it to absorb that fee, to have that software company have the ability to go after the out-of-state scofflaws.
yeah, I'm okay with that. I just wonder, now, is the state of Florida gonna hold up a license renewal for a ticket in Massachusetts? Do we know? That's the,
It may.
okay.
It may. And if I could, I just want to correct the general law I gave you, Mr. Chair, so it's accurate in the minutes. It's Chapter 40, Section 22A. And that allows you, the board, to make that decision on the fines.
Do I understand it from what you were saying that when the officer or the community service officer takes a picture or scans the inspection sticker, that the data is automatically populated into the ticket?
Yes.
That is
Well,
correct.
that's terrific. Just one last comment on the handicap parking. So I assume that if someone doesn't have a handicap plate but has a handicap placard, and that would be checked to make sure.
There are specific rules and regulations on the display of placards, and that is up to the vehicle operator to be in compliance.
Okay.
It's common for that placard to be not displayed, and that would be subject to an appeal.
But if it's properly displayed, the officer's going to see that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I would favor increasing the handicap fine. I don't know whether you go to 300. I could support 300. I don't know what the rest of the board thinks, but I don't think we should stop at $150. And I heard what John Halgren said, but earlier about differential fines. Apart from the complication of that, we do a lot in this town for our visitors and tourists. We give them free parking, except the lousy $15 that they pay at Eldridge Garage, and we even modified that. So as far as I'm concerned, if they're violating the parking rules, I don't have any sympathy for them.
We have
They
a
should get
rough
it-
number of about 80% of the tickets written at non-Chatham residents.
80%.
About 80% of the tickets are written to non-Chatham
Okay.
residents, which is good for Chatham residents because they go by the rules.
Okay. So I endorse your proposal. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Any other board members? Mike?
Yeah, I have a bunch of sort of technical yes or no type questions. Let me start with, I may be the only slow one in the crowd here, but what does town no lose per ticket mean?
That was just, I'd put that in there for each ticket that's written. So if we didn't increase the fees, the town would be like essentially the cost of the ticket and implementing the software, the town would be kind of not so much losing money, but we would be incurring costs. if we didn't increase the fees. So if we left it at $50, every ticket that we wrote over $1,500, the town would be, what's that, $19, and yeah, it'd be $19 we'd be paying out of our pocket, out of the town's pocket, to pay for the software. So essentially, it works out to be about $5.95 if you divide up. What I did was I divided up the total software cost based it upon 1,500 tickets written, the transaction fees. So it's not really the town's losing money. Well, essentially, yes, if the revenue from the violations goes into the general fund, and it'd be down $19.05 if we left it at $50. For the software. Basically, the software is costing $19 a ticket. Yeah.
Let me ask the question a different way. If we leave it at $50, are we, with this process, are we saving money? Because, I mean, you know, all this business about parking clerks and 72% responses to parking tickets, presumably those are things that we're improving our financial performance on. Now, I don't know how the numbers work, but I was with the program just because this is more efficient.
We'd be taking out of the $50 that goes into the general fund, $19.05 will be taken off, and that'll be taken out. So what's that, $30.95, $31.95.
Okay, and that assumes that all the other numbers are the same.
Yes.
Okay, the parking clerk and all that stuff, that we're assuming that's, okay, I got it. All right, so, I bet you could find a good piece of that 1905 in other places, but I don't need to hear what that would be for my purposes. Is it your recommendation that we go forward with this, whether or not we raise the fees?
I guess that would be a decision of the board. If we go.
I'm asking for a recommendation.
I think we should go forward with it, yes. I think it's going to streamline the process. It's moving in the right direction. I think we're gonna have better enforcement of payments. I think it's gonna be better for everyone in general to go with this process. It's, you know, we need to get away from handwriting tickets. You know,
I take it you more or less agree with that, Chief?
100%. I think it's a better product for the officer, the community service officer, the police officer. It makes it easier, more accountable for the ticket to be issued. It makes it faster for the ticket to be issued. I think unfortunately for the offender, it's easier for the offender to pay the ticket, accept the fact of the violation that, you know, he or she was a victim of. I think the ticket clearly explains it. I think it brings it up to, I think it brings technology up in Chatham to where it should be. And quite frankly, because of the fact that simply that I'm out of hard paper tickets, if this is the time to do it, this is the time to do it.
Yeah, okay. Apropos we're already I take it this technology accommodates differentiated fines for different violations. Is that?
Yep.
I mean, the fact that we can do 150 or 300 or whatever implies that. Is there any other, did you give any consideration to any other violations that might be differentiated? I think you've taken care of Mr. Hallgren's suggestion with respect to the lines, but is there any other that you might think about saying, well, maybe that's only $60?
That's a great question. We currently have on the hard paper ticket 15 violation categories.
Right.
I believe this software has the ability to mirror what we have, reduce it, or add to it. I believe years ago, before the issuance of the tickets that we have now, I think one of the line was strictly a blank other. because maybe the officer came across something that, well, it's either this or it's that, but it's not specifically on my ticket violation.
Right.
You could write what that is. So I think if the board wanted to look at the suggestion from Mr. Halgren where, you know, if the board wants to be a little bit lenient on the Main Street violations, that's certainly in your authority to do that. I could go either way with it.
With all due respect, I'm asking you what you think.
It's the highest complaint that we receive. It's the one that we get the attention focused on when I walk Main Street myself with somebody. Look at that vehicle outside the lines. Why don't you do something about that? And I get it. It's I would stick with the 75 across the board, and if you guys want to have an increase on the handicap, 100% behind that.
Well, I was really asking about any others that you thought were worthy of a reduced fee or increased or whatever, but differentiation.
In my opinion, I think what I heard from the community in the past couple of days was if we could show some lenience on the Main Street. I didn't hear any lenience on the lighthouse or the beach parking.
And
or
that's
the hydrants.
basically lines?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So last question, since taking pictures, I take it that's not it doesn't cost you anything extra to take pictures?
Nope.
So it's just a question of the time that the officer or the issuer has to dedicate to taking the pictures?
Right now, the officers are encouraged to take pictures on their own.
Okay.
They use their own cell phone, and then they have to download it and attach it.
yeah.
What's good about this is that the photograph is
right
captured
there.
by the software,
right.
time-stamped. It's one-stop shopping, one push of the button on the software.
So one last comment, and then I will leave you alone here, and this doesn't go to this project. I'm very fully supportive. I think I'd go with a 300 on the handicap parking. I don't know about the rest of my colleagues, but that's kind of my reaction. But in terms of communications generally, I may be the only Mr. Magoo here, but I can't read any of that. And it's not just you. I mean, most everything we put up like that, people can't read. And I think as a general matter, we as a town, you happen to be here and I get to express this to you, it's us as well. We need to be putting up stuff that people can read and that they can actually they can understand what we're trying to communicate to them. I'm speaking more to the town, to the community than I am to you, but you gave me the opportunity to say it. Thank you.
All right, Jeff Dinstrin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Craig and Chief. Great presentation, very interesting. I'm fully supportive. I would stick with the 75, and I'm fully in favor of going to 300 for handicap spots. So I echo, I think, the sentiment of what I hear, at least a consensus amongst the board. Just a couple of comments and questions, if you will. You made the statement in the write-up that it's compatible with any parking charge for parking technologies that the town might be considering by the Parking Solutions Working Group. Is we're not doing anything that might run afoul of those efforts?
Yeah, so when I went out to look for vendors, I was looking for a one-stop shop vendor. One vendor that will provide on-street parking, kiosk parking, parking violations, a whole package. I didn't want to have a mixed environment. So, the Parking Solutions had a list of things that they were looking for if they decide to do anything in the future. And this software is scalable with all of those types of parking, et cetera.
Okay, that sounds great. Have you touched base with Katie Donovan or anybody else in terms of that?
Yes, definitely. Katie was involved in the staff internal review of the program.
Okay, thank you. I do view it as, look, we're modernizing what's really an antiquated system, and the timing's probably right. If you have to order, it's kind of pointless to order new paper, so I think it's time to go forward. I am worried about whether or not those paper tickets are really going to cohere in rain and stuff. I mean, it looks like the slip of paper we get when the town clerk prints the results of elections down in the town hall. It looks like a very similar looking system. I just question whether or not it really is water resistant. And then in terms of payments, if we're going to go to the effort of exacting a parking ticket, we really ought to tighten up the efforts on the back end to collect. So anything we can do that, doesn't add costs, if you will.
This would make it much easier.
Yeah, it should. I mean, I think it should. So we're modernizing, we're hopefully collecting with more efficiencies, and hopefully not costing the town a dime if we increase the rates, if you
And making
will.
it easier
And make it easier
people
for
to
everybody.
pay their fine. Paying online is,
Yeah.
is a lot easier.
Yeah.
As I say, they're gonna scan it, pay it, and done.
Easy peasy. Now, listen, in terms of hearings, do we have hearings now? Do you have occasion to have hearings? And are they about outside of marked areas? Is that where most of the hearings are about?
Yes,
Okay.
pretty much. Only because that's where most of the tickets are issued for.
Yeah.
But the hearings are here in person in the annex.
Yeah. Okay. All right, thank you. Those are the questions I had. Thanks.
Shereen.
Thanks for the presentation, and just briefly, I think this is timely and efficient, and it scales up to future considerations. As far as the payments are concerned, I think the $75 is in keeping with, an increase. I think the most annoying thing is to drive downtown and have, somebody's wheels out and mirrors out and whatnot, and have a big truck coming down, and everybody gets kind of jumbled up a little bit. And I've heard a lot of people lose their mirrors in downtown because of that. So with that, I think we have a general understanding of 300 for the handicap, which I'm in support of. So I'll make a motion if that's fine with you.
Yes.
So I move to approve the new parking violation fine schedule, raising all parking violation fines from $50 to $75, with the exception of handicap parking violation fines, which will increase to $300 as proposed, and approve the implementation of a mobile ticketing unit and cloud-based software system beginning January 1st, 2024.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor, Select Board Member Nacastro,
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis,
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens,
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell,
Aye.
and Select Board Member Mitter says aye. All right, thank you very much for the
Thank you
presentation.
very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, consider letter of support for grant funding of electric vehicle charging stations at Chatham Airport. Projects and Operations Administrator Terry Whalen, I believe, is here, and Huntley's online.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chair and board members. Last June, the Airport Commission, with the encouragement and help of Rivermore Energy and Weston and Sampson, applied for the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Discretionary Grant Program. This is normally called the CFI program. And to help meet the financial requirements of improving the infrastructure for the EV charging stations planned for the airport. You have the overview of the program in your packet. We were encouraged by the aforementioned consultants to write a letter to Congressman Keating and Department of Transportation Administrator Buttigieg and Program Administrator Bott to support our application. Simply, I would like to be able to say in that letter that the Commission has the support of the Select Board for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Huntley. Questions or comments from the board? Mike, do you want to kick it off? You're the liaison.
I'm supportive. I think this is a good program. I think it is part of a larger effort around town. I'm hopeful to get charging stations around town. I really have only one comment, and that's in the letter to Administrator Bott, where we suggest that you can get from town to US Route 6 in less than 10 minutes. I think that maybe as the crow flies, but I doubt you can drive it. But I'm fully supportive.
Thank you.
Jeff.
Yeah, I'm fully supportive as well, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Shereen.
Ditto.
Dean.
I'm supportive also. I do have a question for either Terry or Huntley. So the grant you're applying for is $3.65 million. Is that correct? Do I understand that?
That's the 80% part.
Right, but that, so what is the breakdown in terms of what that money is used for? It's certainly not 5 charging stations. It's,
No, it's infrastructure, it's paving of the parking lot, it's putting in a new curb cut over by the airport, putting green infrastructure, stormwater drainage. It also happens to be in an area that is very close to the bike path. So people who are using the bike path can charge vehicles if necessary, or if they're using the restaurant, they can charge vehicles, or if they're going up for a short flight, they can charge their vehicles. And this is not, we're not planning on this being a free program. We're hoping this will be a revenue producing program.
so if we were to get this grant, you say that the town's match, or the local match is 20%, approximately 900,000 plus. Would that be paid entirely from the town? You say that we're not necessarily committed to that, even if the grant is awarded.
No, we're not committed to it at all. And Eversource is putting in the infrastructure, and their share is about a little less than half of that 912.
And the rest would come from the town of Chatham, or is the state?
The rest would come from the town, but also hoping that we can get funding from other sources as we go forward. We can look into that.
The state DOT?
And pay for it that way.
The state DOT a possible source for additional funding, supplemental funding?
State DOT is a possible source, correct.
Thank you.
Quick question. So this is going to be set up outside the fence line in the what we call like the general parking area, I believe, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Right across from the annex and the gravel park, what is now the gravel parking lot.
Which is now the gravel parking lot. There's a proposal to be some kind of improvements to the area, whether they're paved or whatever, to accommodate a better charging kind of little mini lot, whatever you want to say, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And obviously, this is a money-making proposal, charging for the services. Is it going to be a flat fee? Are you talking about doing any tiers, resident, non-resident, or, I mean, it's just, I mean, I don't know what kind of use, it definitely, there's a need for it, no arguments there. But at what volume are you expecting it? Are you thinking of fee rates or any kind of discussion on any of that kind of thing?
We haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that's actually a select board policy discussion that we need to have, because it would be one policy across the board. And this is in the non-aerial use area, so this is appropriate for the select board members to weigh in at a later date.
No, okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
At this stage, I really don't have any issue with it. I mean, we can move it forward. If anyone else has any other questions, or, yes, Jeff?
A brief question, Corey. In terms of the overall strategy for EV in town, this gives us 5 charging stations. What's our goal? We have an overall goal of, and maybe not be for the Airport Commission, maybe it's for the Energy and Climate Action Committee, but, you know, how many stations are we going to be seeking, and does this satisfy that goal, or are we going to be looking elsewhere as well?
Yes, so Mr. Chair, I do know we have installations anticipated here for the annex, the back parking lot as well, where our fleet EV vehicles are, as well as the 549 Main Street parking lot. And the Eldridge Garage parking lot does have a component for EV charging stations. That's in development. So I think at some point, we'll hopefully have them at every town facility. And again, and not many towns have faced this yet, or really faced the policy decision, but it's just a matter of how to regulate that in a way of number of hours someone can charge. Is it free, or do we charge for charging, or do we outsource it? So there's some of those decisions that when we inquired of other towns, I think Needham and Nantucket were the only 2 towns that we had seen that had a policy so far.
Sounds like a goal.
Dean?
What's the difference between level 2 and level 3? I don't have an electric car.
Yeah, Terry can weigh in. I'm sorry, Hunley, go right ahead.
I was just going to say, level 2 charging is what you might get when you plug your vehicle into a home outlet, a 120 volt. It takes about 10 to 12 hours to charge your vehicle. The level 3 chargers are the fast charging, similar to what the Tesla has, and it can charge your vehicle in 30 minutes to 45 minutes.
And it's the Airport Commission's intention to charge people for the use of these charging stations?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone entertain a motion? Mike?
Yeah, I would move that we approve the inclusion of language in the draft letter indicating that the Select Board has, is in support of this initiative.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, additional questions or comments? All those in favor, go the other way. Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Nacastro.
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Okay, good luck. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, lady, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Next, consider engaging in an engineering study to develop a plan to make the current Center for Active Living at 193 Stony Hill Road more serviceable for the needs of the Chatham seniors. This is a agenda request by Select Board Member Nacastro, so I will turf it over to him.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your putting this on the agenda so quickly. I brought this forward following the recent results of the special town meeting concerning 1610 Main Street to address ongoing operations of the Council on Aging and the needs of Chatham seniors. Others might disagree, but as I suggested following the special town meeting, I believe that the search for a new site for a new Center for Active Living should be discontinued for the present. And I suggest that the near term, and who knows, perhaps even the longer term future of the Center for Active Living is at 193 Stony Hill Road. In any event, from my perspective as the Select Board member who has been liaison to the Council on Aging for almost 9 years, I submit that it is time to seriously address the major deficiencies of the current building, and only the major deficiencies, so that we can have an up-to-date baseline to know what can be done to remediate those deficiencies and what it would cost. Only then can the town make some serious decisions about the future of the Center for Active Living. And I hasten to add that we are likely to experience sticker shock when we get the numbers to improve matters at a building which is assessed at only $1.1 million. And we'll have to make some decisions as to whether funding of that magnitude should be applied to remediate that building. So I'm proposing in the request, and I'm going to offer a motion when I finish, just to kick the discussion off. I'm proposing that the town manager, with whom I've had a couple of discussions, be tasked to include in her FY25 budget funding for a high-level study to be undertaken by an engineer or architect or a builder, targeted only at the most serious problems at the existing building, which could be identified, I think, by a visit from a group of staff like the town manager, the director of the Council on Aging, the community services director, chair of the Council on Aging. I'd be happy to participate as liaison, and the town building inspector. But I can think of several areas that come to mind just from having been in that building a number of times. And I know Mr. Dykens and I have, and perhaps others on the board have inspected that building. But I speak of the HVAC system and air quality circulation, elderly and disability access, essential structural repairs, we've talked about the foundation, the obstructing columns in the program rooms, a build-out of the third floor Council on Aging meeting room, fire suppression and water system updates, all of this together with a cost estimate. I'm not proposing the kind of comprehensive analysis that is suggested in the staff memo. And my understanding, based on discussion with the town manager, is that the study that I'm contemplating might not require an RFP. If that is the case, I would advocate engaging a consultant that has had no connection with the recent Council on Aging project proposals for Middle Road, 1610 Main Street, or Stepping Stones Road, so that we can have a fresh, independent look at this. I also want to exclude from the study any address of the parking situation. So I'd like to offer this motion, and I do have a copy for Kathy if we get this far, that the Select Board task the town manager to include in her FY 2025 budget proposals sufficient funding for a professional consultant study to evaluate the possible remediation of major deficiencies at the current Center for Active Living facility at 193 Stony Hill Road, so as to help make the facility more serviceable for the needs of Chatham seniors, and for the study to include an approximate cost estimate for any such remediation. That's the motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do I hear a second for discussion purposes?
Second.
All right, we have a second. Further discussion? Mike?
Yeah, you were going fine there, Dean, for a while, but I've got to get off the train. I agreed with you when you proposed a study such as you generally outlined when you asked for the agenda item. Let me start, and I don't need to go off on it at length here. I want to just call attention to the value statements, one of which is support demographic diversity by addressing the unique needs of younger and senior populations. I think we should have that in mind as we address this. The second thing I want to say is I appreciate that we have to have money to do this, how much we can talk about. I think $50,000 is vastly too much. Obviously, we're not going to get it for $1.98, but we need to do something. In terms of your request that the town manager put money for this in the 2025 budget, that contemplates that we start this sometime next summer. I would like to figure out a way that we can start this promptly on a financial level that is more in the nature of, I don't know if we can call it pocket change, but a reasonable sum that gets us answers to all the questions that you've identified, and which, by the way, I think the staff memo did a very good job of identifying as well. I would include parking. I mean, I don't see any reason to leave elements out that would be material to a decision about what to do with this building that would require further study. So, and in that vein, by the way, I would also want to make it clear here that our undertaking, or at least from my perspective, I can't speak for the rest of you, but in my view, our undertaking this does not represent a decision to proceed with anything other than taking a look at what we learned from the study. The last thing I'll say here is I think that that's pretty much what I have to say. I think the staff memo does a very good job of outlining what we would like to know, what I would like to know in any event. The implication that somehow we can't get that or something like that for less than $50,000 is one that I'd like to negative. And say, let's see how much of what is laid out here we can learn with a reasonable approach that is timely and is economically efficient.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to address a couple of points Mike
Go ahead.
made. The reason I was putting this in the FY 2025 budget is because in my conversations with Jill, it was clear to me there really wasn't any existing funding. There is a town manager discretionary account, but I think there are some other items that are contemplated, perhaps even in the housing area. So I was trying to avoid tapping into that. But if there is funding, I would certainly favor doing it sooner.
Yes, and I would look into that further, depending on the board's vote tonight to proceed. We haven't quite yet closed out the books as of July or June 30th. So there potentially is funding sources. But again, some of the funding earmarks have been towards like a community strategic planning study that we've been we've had carried as an earmark since 2020, but put on hold. Some of those other things, certainly I'll check back with the board with their goals and objectives too.
The other point I wanted to address, did you want to comment?
Well, I just would like to say, in my notion, this may be dreamland, but I'm talking about spending $20,000 or $25,000. The idea that we can't find $20,000 or $25,000 until July of 2024 just seems to me to be inefficient.
Can I ask
But I just have to comment, it's not about being inefficient, it's about having the data available to be responsible with the town funds so that I can commit the town manager's engineering and consulting funds. So I just want to put that out there. I know that Dean had mentioned to go to have it target the FY25 budget, but I need to be responsible. So as of tonight, I don't know what I have unearmarked that I can certainly present back to the board.
procedural question? So if we were to wait until next annual town meeting for the funds for the study, and whatever findings are, that were done and highlighted in the repair or repairs that are suggested that we do, and we vote on that, that would not take an action until the following town meeting, because it would probably wouldn't be budgeted, correct?
So the process is, yes, to try to get the feasibility study or whatever study done, so that if there is a warrant article for town meeting that exceeds our normal threshold for a capital project, that could be put forward for the May 2024 town meeting.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Just to finish on a couple of other points. So with respect to the staff report, that, as I understand it, that relates back to a study that was done back in 2011 for the purposes of assessing what it would cost to affix an adult daycare center to that building. Is that correct, Jill? That's how I
Yes,
understand
the
it.
addition for the adult daycare or
Yeah.
adult day center, yes.
And they determined that all these various things had to be done to the building. That was 2011, and it was going to cost something in the order of $1 million+, as I recall.
Yes, a little bit more.
Yeah.
That
I
makes
guess what I want to say, I'm not looking to make this building perfect. I'm just saying 1610 was defeated at town meeting. Middle Road was defeated at town meeting. Stepping Stones Road never made it to town meeting, for a vote anyway. We've got a program that we're running for seniors in a building that is defective for it. And I want to do the minimum that needs to be done to make it more serviceable. It's not going to be ideal. So that's the direction, that's my thinking. And the reason I exclude parking is there really is no solution to make that parking better, because there's an easement that comes across it. And I think, with all due respect to the studies that were done by our consultants, too much was made of parking at that building if there were to have been a new facility at that location. Because unless you want the ideal, and this board unanimously, with the exception of the one member who had to recuse for conflict, supported what we thought was a pretty ideal location at 1610 Main Street, and I still feel that way. I think that was the place to go. But we didn't get the 2/3 vote. So I'm willing to accept less than the ideal for the current purposes of improving the facility at which we conduct our programs for seniors. That's my thinking about why I didn't want to get into parking, because I really don't think there's anything you can do. There's only so many cars you can put there. We originally had a concept to put an underground garage there, and that met with some opposition, if you were going to do a new building. So that's, but, I think if you add parking in, we can. I won't stand or fall on that, but I don't think we're going to hear very much about it. What I'm looking to know is, what's it going to cost to put a new HVAC system in? What's it going to cost to, I don't know, put a dormer in on the 3rd floor so the board can meet in that building without bumping their head up against the ceiling, that sort of thing. That's what I'm talking about. So, there you have it. Thank you. Thank you for letting me respond to Mike.
All right, Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Corey, and thank you, Dean. It's probably going to be no surprise that I'm fairly ambivalent about this, but I'll likely approve some iteration, or likely vote to approve some iteration. I agree with Mr. Shell that $50,000 is if that's, and I hearken back to the study that was done for the swim club, and it was the most exhaustive study I've ever seen in my entire career, and it probably should have cost $50,000. I don't think we need to go to that level of detail, to be honest with you. I'm very, very careful that, you know, we're trying to, we're not going to expand the footprint. We're not thinking about an expansion of the footprint. And I'm very, very careful that what we ultimately end up with really won't meet the programmatic needs going forward, whether we put a dormer on the third floor or whether we widen the hallway in the library. Or if we get rid of the lousy rotten poles and the, you know, the lolly columns in the basement. And are we going to do the kitchen? Or are we, you know, so, you know, I'll support some kind of expenditure, but I'm not going $50,000 to look at that building because I know it's a mess. It's a mess, and we're going to end up spending millions to do what Dean wants to do, or would like to do, or at least like to investigate. So, and I frankly really don't want to wait till a vote at town meeting either to expend the funds. I'd like to find funds now, or 20 or 30 grand to do this. I think someone savvy can get in there and that understands the building and is a builder or understands the building trades, understands HVAC, and can come up with, you know, a pretty good schedule of what's needed there. There's a lot needed there. And I'm afraid what we're going to get as a result is really not going to ultimately meet their programmatic needs. So then, as a select board member, am I spending good money after bad? Perhaps. That drives my ambivalence. But I would support some kind of a number if Jill can come up with a number that she can get a decent study done with. I'll support that. But
Shreen.
Thanks.
Oh, thanks everybody for your weighing in. I agree with both Mike and Jeff in the timeliness of getting a study done. I truly don't believe that this building will ever suit the needs of a senior center, and I would want to know, you know, do we have the available funds from the town manager's fund to be able to effect a quick and, you know, $30,000, $25,000, $30,000 study, and let's find that out and move forward. I can't see waiting until town meeting to, you know, do another feasibility study per se of another COA, you know, initiative that will take another year to get some sort of concept on it and approval of fundings. It's just we can't do this to our seniors at all. I think it's torturous to understand that they're living, you know, they're in an environment that isn't compatible to their needs as a community, and I think it's atrocious. So if we can go ahead and do a quick study, find out what we need to do, I'd be very supportive of that. But I'm not going to be supportive of going to town meeting for money at this point until I know more information.
I just want to make a comment. I know you guys want to make follow-up comments, but sooner than later, all on board. I think we could do it at a lower budget than $50,000 because I think we have a pretty general idea of what's going to be on the list. They're going to be like, oh, you need a new HVAC system. Surprise. We need right. So we have a strong expectation of what's going to show up on that list. We just need a professional reinforcement that this is going to probably be estimated at X amount of dollars, et cetera. So there's not a huge amount of surprises about knowing that there's deficiencies in various areas. That's fine. And this is a municipal building. It's being used in a certain way. It may have a future use down the road. But we need to figure out what to do with the building, what deficiencies the building has, so we can address it for whatever use currently is done with or any future use it has with. So I would support spending some less than $50,000 in as reasonable a time frame to kind of reinforce what we're probably already expecting is going to show up on the list. So Dean, then Jeff, then Mike again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to note for the record that the $50,000 fiscal note didn't come from me. I think Mike was the first one who mentions because most of our studies have cost $50,000. I think that's where that came from, but not from me. Yeah, but that's not my memo, that's the staff's memo.
Sorry, it's in the memo. I mean, I'm not,
I'm just trying, look, it's pretty clear there are no votes to support this other than mine tonight.
that isn't.
Well, not in the formulation that I proposed. I think that's what I hear.
I think there's a desire to do it sooner than waiting to town meeting.
All I'm saying, I was going to say more broadly. We had town meeting in September. We're about to go into November tomorrow. We lost at the special town meeting. We've been there 4 times. 5, I guess, if you add Middle Road. This board has got to decide what we want to do. So if we don't want to waste time and money on looking at this building, then we ought to have a discussion about where we're going to go from here. And maybe that's the conversation we should have. If we're talking about wasting time, that this board can waste time too.
No, I'll go Shreen, please.
This was not about whether this is doing this for this building. I agree with you that it needs some upgrades. I'm just saying that I think it's more timely to do it quicker than later, and that we shouldn't be spending an exorbitant amount of money. The example being the swim club, as Jeff had said, it was an extensive, report. We need to know exactly what we need to get done and get an idea of that, and then move forward that way. That's where I'm.
Okay, Mike, then Jeff.
Yeah, I think we're getting kind of all wrapped around the axle here. We have a program which is sitting in a building at 193 today. We know there are deficiencies there. We've been told that over a number of years. There was, frankly, while we're talking about what was decided or not decided at one special town meeting, one annual town meeting, I think there was a recognition that that building is probably not adequate to service those needs. We don't necessarily need to hang our hat on that, but I do think that before we go off and look for another alternative, if that's what we're going to do, under the heading of what we have been told, which is make do with what you have, I think we ought to see what it is we have and whether we can make do with it responsibly in terms of the safety and the adequacy of the facilities for the programs. And all I'm saying, and to that extent, I thought that's what you were really proposing. And I understand, but from that point forward, my only addition to that comment and my agreement to that is, let's do that now or as quickly as we can, and let's do it for as close to $1.98 as we can do it. And I think it is reasonable to try to do that in the immediate future, not in May at town meeting. That's where I am, and I think that's our responsibility here, and frankly, I thought that's really what you were asking. This memo, it lays out all the things that we already know. As Corey has said, we know what we're looking at. I mean, it's not a big surprise. We need somebody with expert authenticity who is, it doesn't have to be somebody that charges us an arm and a leg, expert authenticity to say, these are the things that, as a matter of code, as a matter of the various things that are listed in here, you're going to have to address, and it's likely to cost you in this range to do it, at which point we are in a position to say one of two things. Either we should invest in that under the heading of make do with what you've got, or that is a waste of money. It is silly to spend that money for that. We have to look at alternatives. That's the story.
Response, Dean.
I agree with everything you just said. And as far as the timing, I thought I said earlier, I was trying to address the fact that I was told we don't really have funding, but town manager indicates that she could go and look at it. So I would suggest, to keep everybody at this panel happy tonight, that we give the town manager a week or two, working with the new finance director to see if there are some funds and what might be available and we can decide if the price is too high or not. And then we can take a vote at that time.
Yes.
I'm all fine with that. I'd like to add to the charge to the town manager that she do whatever she can do to find out what we can get for the dollars that she might have available. In other words, not just limited to how much money have you got here, now we'll go find, but let's see what kind of an analytical project can we construct at the same time we're looking for the funds to pay for it.
I'm okay with that.
Is a couple of weeks window a reasonable amount of time?
Definitely, just for us to close out the books. And it's not that nothing will happen until I have a set ending balance and moving forward, which I think we do, and we'll be able to accommodate the board's request. So what I'll do is I'll try to get the group together, get going on, at least the internal staff walkthrough of the CFAL now and I don't think it's going to take weeks or so to find the money. I think that if the board, votes tonight to move forward with it, not put a dollar value in there. I mean, that's where we kind of got stuck when we had a $50,000 limit with the swim club study. We got something for $50,000, even through the RFP process. So allow us to have some latitude about the scope. And if there's anything that needs to come back that's not consistent with the board's vote, then we'll come back.
Okay, so with that being said, would you like to withdraw your motion?
Yes, I will. I will withdraw the motion. I think Mr. Dykens will have to withdraw the second.
Yes.
I'd rather not take a vote until the town manager comes back to us. And I did want to ask though, Jill, is this the type of thing that requires an RFP? Or can you select a consultant?
Well, engineering and consulting doesn't, but I need to put a scope together to, if it's not and we've used so many engineers on Cape to even with regards to the CFAL project, I might have to try to scope something out and solicit interest that maybe is not on Cape. I don't know yet. So I want to be sensitive to that concern. I don't think that I need to come back. If the board's all in favor of moving forward with this, I don't think I need to come back to the board unless there's an issue or a problem. And if that's the case, then, we can revisit it. If time is of the essence, we want to get even ready for town meeting with an article, say no later than March, February, the latest. I need to get going with this so you have an informed decision whether to proceed with something at town meeting.
I'm not comfortable putting this for a vote until we hear back from you on the money. I really am not. And the other points that Mike brought up.
Additional thoughts, Mike?
I'm not clear. I think that was what Jill was proposing, was she was going to work with what we've given her and let us know if she has a problem. Am I wrong about that, or?
That's right. There is funding in there. I just have to do an internal review, and frankly, one of Alex's carryover items post-retirement is closing out the books for our new finance director who starts next week. I think we're really close to it. So I think it was more just of a timing issue in my response to you about available funds.
And the only, I mean, when you say you're comfortable to the extent it goes forward beyond a couple of weeks, can you just kind of keep us apprised of your progress, if you will?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want to vote tonight on this motion? Is that what you want?
I would like a vote just to either get
authorize
started
the
or to
town
push it
manager-
aside and focus on something
I
else.
believe you're looking for a motion to authorize the town manager to identify funds and,
Resubmit the motion, reoffer the motion, as I read before. I can read it again.
the motion you put forward, basically gave a timetable of next town meeting, so we got a
Okay,
timetable.
we'll strike that.
Yeah. Let him make his motion. To make sure I think we have, if we make a slight amendment.
So I'll read the revised motion. I move that the select board task the town manager to engage a professional consultant study to evaluate the possible remediation of major deficiencies at the current Center for Active Living facility at 193 Stony Hill Road so as to help make the facility more serviceable for the needs of Chatham seniors, and for the study to include an approximate cost estimate for any such remediation. Are you okay with major deficiencies, Mr. Shell? Because you wanted something a little more.
I think that's perfect.
Okay,
Okay.
do we have a
That's the
second?
motion.
Second.
Second. Further discussion? I think we're good. All those in favor? Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Nacastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Aye.
Select Board Member Metter says aye. All right, that was a good discussion. All right. Next, informational discussion on townwide communication preferences survey. Communications Manager Shauna Neely is present.
Hi.
Rocking the orange tonight, thank you.
As briefly as possible, as I know you still have a lot of work to do tonight. As you know, since 2019, the board has had some component on their goals and objectives to improve communications with the community members. And in, I believe it was 2020, annual town meeting did approve a dedicated position, which, as we work through the pandemic and now have worked through some staffing challenges, I'm able to transition to fully. And as that gets underway, I've undertaken developing a communications plan for the town. And the most vital component of that is to ensure that the message that we are trying to send to a particular audience is being transmitted through the proper channel that that audience is paying attention to. So this survey is designed to gauge where our community members are finding information about the town, about municipal government, about our projects. It's designed to give some basic demographic information, and then to see which channels that the town already has that people are subscribing to or following, how often they are looking for us to put out news and information, and what kind of information they find most valuable from us. Not only will this information sort of guide the production of the plan, but it'll also provide us with a baseline so that if in the future we resurvey, we can see if we've increased satisfaction with how we're doing, or if we've increased followers on certain accounts, or shifted in any way how people are using our website, how often they're visiting it, and that type of information. So my plan for distribution is primarily online, through the town's website, on our social media accounts. I'll be asking Monomoy Regional Schools if they would share the link to the survey as well, so we get it out to as many families as possible. Really trying to reach sort of those individuals that are not already engaged with the town, because we know they're already here, they're already listening. So trying to reach those who are not already engaged. Paper copies will also be available at town buildings, the COA, hopefully the library, and if there are no suggested changes to the format or to any of the questions, my hope is to have it live online on November 6th with a closing of Friday, December 8th.
Questions from the board? Shreen?
Shauna, thanks for putting this together. You know, I think the communications in the town is improving, and that's a really good thing for the community. And having a dedicated person doing that is most helpful. Appreciate the survey. I just had a question about, you know, typically surveys don't, I mean, an open-ended question is kind of a difficult one to evaluate. And number 19 is an open-ended question. And I was wondering what was the rationale in not considering, like, identifying, like, customer service or social media, reverse 911, emails, anything like that, so people could bullet it out, and then with an other, so that you'd have a more general idea as to what people were really thinking about.
Sure. I think when I was surveying the other surveys that are out there from different towns, most of them did have one or two open-ended questions that really were more freewheeling answers that I found very interesting looking over the results. I wanted to give that sort of opportunity, like lay it out there, what do you think?
I understand that, but this is that's kind of a crux of the survey, is to know that one particular thing. So it's just my opinion. I mean, generally the surveys, you've done well with that. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, additional questions or comments from the board? Mike?
Just a question. Do you feel you have a good access to our non-resident community members, summer residents, whatever?
It's interesting to look at some of the information we can pull from Facebook about where people are subscribing from, where their residences are, and we do have a very, obviously Chatham-centric, but we do have a good pull from other areas of the country. So I believe that we have some capability of reaching our non-resident taxpayers. We can certainly, if there seems to be a desire to have more direct communications rather than like a subscription or they have to follow us, we always have the tax bills, water bills that we can always slip some paper copy into as a way of reaching the broadest audience.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, and I'll leave it to you as to what you want to do. But I mean, given the ratio of non-residents to residents, you might want to think about that. Thank you.
We also have a very good relationship with the chamber, who will share our social media posts, and that reaches, not just second homeowners, but visitors as well.
Okay, final comments, thoughts?
Looks good, looks great.
That's good. All right, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much. All right. Moving on to our appointment section. We have an appointment to the Council on Aging Board of Directors. We have two candidates, actually, Dean, I'll let you kick it off. We have a couple potential seats to fill if we would like to.
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint Laura Everett to the Council on Aging Board of Directors until June 30th, 2026, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Do I hear any other nominations for the 2026 slot? None? Okay, all those in favor, Select Board Member Nacastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Now we'll for this position to June 30th, 2024.
Mr. Chairman, there are currently two positions available for 2026. And there's one available for 2024. That's to complete a term that someone just stepped down
It says
from.
the other two terms.
I think that was Mr.
Yes.
Gagliano's term.
You're
So-
correct. You are correct, yes.
I'd like to move, I move to appoint Stan Mansfield to the Council on Aging Board of Directors until June 30th, 2026, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
All right, do I hear a second to that?
Second. Oh, yeah.
All those in favor, Select Board Member Nacastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens?
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Aye.
And Select Board Member Metter says aye. Yes, okay, so we fill the two spots for 2026. We have some openings we have an opening for 2024, which we're going to be doing some interviews moving forward.
Yeah, I just want to say, these are great candidates. I have no reservations about them. I think we have 4 candidates in the queue to be interviewed. I might have considered asking that we defer the entire business until all of them had been interviewed. I decided not to do that because of my respect and admiration for the candidates we've elected tonight. But I do want to just mention for the record that I think we should be looking at a possibility that we talked about earlier, depending on how those interviews go, which was to expand the board. There's a lot going on here with COA, as our prior discussion indicates, and I think new blood. And by the way, in our last interview session, the chairwoman mentioned that she wasn't sure that there wouldn't be further retirements. So between that and the possibility of expanding the board, I'd like to make it clear that it is not a fool's errand for the 4 people who are in the queue to come and do a strong and interested and enthusiastic interview, because we need their engagement.
Good, well said. Well said.
Well said.
Next,
Chairman.
the zoning board of appeals is slated. I believe that the select board member liaison, select board member Dykens, had a request.
Yeah, I would just like to ask the select board's forbearance and patience, if you will, to kind of postpone the approval of this. I just haven't had a chance to do my due diligence as liaison with the chair, et cetera, so just need some time.
Any concerns with that from the board? All right, we will defer that to a later date.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Town managers report for September 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In tonight's report is the current items and also the town department's report for September 2023. And as I typically do, we recognize years of service of Team Chatham, our town employees. And as noted in here, for October, Jeff Phillips wins the highest longevity of those that were hired in October at 15 years. And as you see, the remaining other employees with the least amount of longevity still recognized is Police Officer Chaparales at 1 year. And then our employees' years of service for November, we have Sue Roccanello, who's the administrative assistant in the Harbor Master's office at 25 years. We want to congratulate Sue for her dedicated service. And as you see, other employees that have hired since 6 years ago with our least amount of longevity, but still at 1 year, is Jonathan Bennett, who's in our DPW heavy equipment operator. So just a congratulations to all of the years of service anniversaries for October and November. And in this report, I've also introduced our new finance director, who is starting on Monday, November 6th. It's Carrie Mazzaroli. She hasn't corrected me yet on her last name, but I'm sure when I do introduce her at next week's meeting, the bio is in here, and I can get into that detail while she's here, and so you can actually see her. And I'm very excited for her to join us, and her first order of business, besides looking at the FY25 budget, is she has to attend a Community Preservation Committee meeting that Monday night, or Monday late afternoon, so she's getting right into things. And just our recruitment postings are noted on our website. We're about to fill or have just recently filled some key positions. And then the upcoming recruitments are for the transfer station gate attendant, the DPW highway equipment operator mechanic, and the airport administrative assistant, which is a part-time position. And as typical noted throughout the report or the monthly reports from all of the divisions that I know you find very interesting, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions or comments from the board? No? Well, as always, it's very appreciative, this report. We love this. I mean, this is very extensive information, which I greatly appreciate. And for those who actually spend the time to go through this, I mean, there's a vast amount of information that I think is very beneficial to absorb and understand what's going on in the day-to-day operations of this community, so. All right, with all that being said, we're gonna take a brief recess. We are going to move into the small meeting room. It will be the same remote meeting link that we're gonna use. We will be starting a new recording over there because we're gonna be transitioning from rooms. And we're gonna go into a working session for the select board on the committee boards and commission review process. So with that being said, we're going to recess, take a couple of minutes, move across over there, and we'll see you shortly.